what I'm going to be laying out is the things that I can do with my lawful authority as president to make the system work better, even as I continue to work with Congress and encourage them to get a bipartisan, comprehensive bill that can solve the entire problem.
The fact of the matter is the president would be well served not to go down this path, because he is putting at risk and in peril a real opportunity here to do some things for the country.
Well, the president has announced he's going to make this speech prime time on immigration and his executive action. Said to shield about 5 million people from deportation, affect a number of different elements of immigration reform from the White House. Speaker Boehner, through his spokesman, releasing a statement. If Emperor Obama ignores the American people and announces an amnesty plan that he himself has said over and over again exceeds his constitutional authority, he will cement his legacy of lawlessness and ruin the chances for congressional action on this issue and many others. Today, a poll out with the Wall Street Journal, NBC. President Obama's executive action on immigration. There you see the approve, disapprove numbers out today. And on the issue of pathway to citizenship, it's the other way. Favor 57%, oppose 40%. With that, let's bring in our panel. Syndicated columnist George Will, Juan Williams, columnist with The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Charles.
I think that the poll you showed is very encouraging. On the one hand, you get a majority of people who agree with the president on the substance of what he wants to do. And yet the same people are saying this is not the way to do it by a substantial margin, by 9%. And that, I think, is the crux here. People are talking about how if Obama acts, it will poison the well, that won't be able to work together for 2 years, or it will ruin the chances of getting an agreement over time in Congress over immigration. But those are much smaller stakes than what's really at stake here. History is not going to care much about what's going to happen in these 2 years, but it will care about the encroachment of the executive in a gross way on the prerogatives of Congress that the president himself has reiterated over and over again. This is something he is not allowed to do. It is outside his powers, and now all of a sudden he's got a couple of lawyers who, of course, will find anything you want in the law. You can indict a ham sandwich if you want. They are now going to they're going to vindicate a ham sandwich here and pretending that this is allowed. It is not. He knows it, and the damage it will do to the separation of powers will be great.
One, we're not going to play the massive montage of sound bites of the president saying he can't do this and wouldn't do this before. What about this turnabout and how it plays politically up on the Hill?
Well, I think it looks hypocritical on his part. I think that's why everybody's talking about it. I mean, he said, you know, this looks like it's beyond my power to the Latino groups that had been asking him to do this for several months, if not years. I think the underlying story is sort of interesting, which is that he very much wanted the Congress to act, and the Congress has had a year and a half, I believe, since the passage of the bipartisan Senate bill to take some action. And even today, Harry Reid up on the Hill was saying that if John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, brought that Senate bill to a vote, it would pass. There are enough votes in the House to pass it, but that Republicans, as part of their policy of obstruction and all the like, and playing to the Tea Party base that says this is amnesty, refused to allow a vote. So I think that's the key issue, and I just have a strong feeling here, so different than what Charles just said. When I look at history, I remember Ronald Reagan using executive authority. I remember George H.W. Bush. I remember Bill Clinton using it.
Sure. Now, they used it for a number of different things. On the issue of illegal immigrants, on immigration,
right.
You know, Rush Limbaugh mentioned this today on his show, responding to your very point. Take a listen.
Ronald Reagan signed a piece of legislation. It was the Simpson-Mazzoli Act. It was 1986. Congress debated and passed a law to grant amnesty to 3 million illegal immigrants, and Reagan signed it. They are saying that's exactly what Obama's going to do. They are claiming that Obama or Reagan signing legislation, thereby making it legal, is the same thing as an Obama executive order. It's breathtaking what they're trying to say here. Reagan had a statute behind him.
Fair, George?
It is, and it goes beyond that. Let me explain why I think this is institutional vandalism that we're seeing here. After 9/11, the FBI and other law enforcement authorities said we are going to have to devote fewer resources to bank robbers, for example, and more to fighting terrorism because of scarce resources. This is very different. The president is nullifying a law. He's not doing so because he says we have scarce resources. He never mentions that because they aren't scarce, in fact. He is rather saying that something radical has changed, and he doesn't say what that is. From the years of 2009 and 2010, when he had majorities in Congress that would have enabled him to do whatever he wanted. He's not citing, as we did after Tiananmen Square, allowing a category of immigrants from China to stay here rather than go back, or Haiti after the earthquake. He's not citing that at all. The fact is, he's not even citing any legal opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel and the Department of Justice that would explain why he's doing this. He's doing this because he thinks he can. And it is nullification. It is not enforcement discretion within any meaningful sense.
Allow me to engage you on that point for a second. You know, you say there is not a scarcity of resources, but in fact, I don't think anybody's making the case, George, that we have the capacity to deport these 11 or 12 million people. Nobody's saying that. Okay.
Or the will.
Or the will. Good point. So in that case, then, it is a matter of discretion, or what people call prosecutorial discretion or administrative relief, to use that authority to then say, this is how we will prioritize. We will go after the criminals. We will go after people who are a threat to our society. But we're not going to break up families any longer. And to just respond very quickly to Rush Limbaugh's point, which I took to heart, you know, Rush Limbaugh's talking about Simpson-Mazzoli. What Ronald Reagan did was, after Simpson-Mazzoli, say that law would allow families to be broken up because children under the age of 18 were not included. So I will take executive action to protect those kids.
There was a statute that passed Congress that started in 1986 that passed both houses of Congress.
That was before the president acted.
Of course.
Okay, all right.
But
the only rationale Obama is citing in doing this, excuse me, frog in my throat here, is not lack of resources, is not a crisis, it's not something new. As he said, the system is broken, it has been for decades. It is one thing and one thing alone. I waited long enough. Well, that's what a caudillo says in a banana republic. I waited long enough and the National Assembly hasn't acted, so I'm going to issue a decree. That is not how it works in our system.
all right, quickly, George. Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, says the power of the purse should be used, that fund the government through the end of the year, and then one by one on appropriations bills. Go after it that way. Ted Cruz thinks all the nominations should be held up until this illegal amnesty is removed, in his words, a deterrent to a lawless president. What do you think Republicans are going to do? What do you think they should do to push back against what they call this constitutional aggression?
They're going to do and should do the full menu of levers at their disposal, two of which you just cited. But they can also slow down all kinds of things in the Senate. This government works on comity and consensus when it works at all. And the president, by destroying both, is going to find out just how many grains of sand they can put in the gears.
We should point out that Governor Rick Perry said that Texas would look seriously at filing a lawsuit about this. Next up, Democrats fret about fixing a broken Democratic Party.